Hello, sweet friends, and welcome to Stellar J Studios. I am Gina, and I am thrilled you are here with me today because I have done some thinking. It's always dangerous when I do thinking. So, for the longest time, I used to think that I was not an artist because I never went to art school, I never took art classes, and I just kind of found my way into art through scrapbooking. So it got me thinking because I've always felt like I was less than. And it got me thinking about, well, wait a second. What are actually the differences between scrapbooking, journaling, and sketchbooking? And I'm going to call it sketchbooking because I'm going to make these verbs. I'm not going to make these nouns. I'm going to talk about the actual process of scrapbooking, journaling, and sketchbooking. And this is all according to me. So you are welcome to have your own opinions and experiences on this subject. But for me, if I think about scrapbooking, journaling, and sketchbooking, and I think about how they're different, I immediately think, okay, what's the first word that comes to mind when I'm thinking about scrapbooking? And so I always think of a photo. Journal, I always think of words. And sketchbooking, I always think of art. Then I think of, well, why would I work in a scrapbook? Because I want to recreate memories. And then I think about why would I want to work in journal? Because I like to, I'm going to use the word ponder. I like to think about stories, think about things that have happened or things that may happen or things that are totally imaginary. And why would I work in a scrapbook? Or a sketchbook, sorry, because I want to practice and I want to find stories and then practice retelling those stories. And so when I'm doing this, I think about how are these guys different? But what happens is I think about, well, wait a second. They're not as different as they are similar. Because if I go back to my scrapbooking, it's to recreate memories, right? Well, what are memories? Well, memories are stories. And stories are just messages, retellings, foretellings, what you want to say. It's why, like, you want to be heard, you want to say something, you want to evoke a feeling. And I mean, that's ultimately what you do want to do. You want to evoke a feeling. And there's two types of feelings that you get when you create. And when I say you, I say me. There's the feeling that I get creating it. So if I'm working in a scrapbook, I can recreate that feeling I had whenever I was at my son's soccer game or at my daughter's birthday party. And so I can recreate that feeling. And then I also get a feeling when I view it. So I go back and look at my scrapbooks and I view that layout that I created, or when others view it, they can evoke that same feeling. And so started thinking, well, instead of them being different, what if I look at how they're the same? Because isn't a journal evoking a feeling? And can't a journal use photos? And can't a scrapbook use words? And then can't a sketchbook use photos? And can a sketchbook use words? And then can you use art in a journal? And can you use art in a scrapbook? And the answer is yes. All of these are interconnected. And I started to think of it as, when you learn to ride a bike, and I know this is it's an overused analogy, but when you learn to ride a bike, you start off with your training wheels and you start off maybe even on a tricycle. So if I think about scrapbooking, it was like I was on a tricycle because I had that photo. That photo was there to anchor whatever it was I was creating, whether it was a picture of my son at a band concert or whatever. And immediately when people looked at it, or when I looked at it, I saw that very literal photo and it told the story and it evoked a feeling. Then I moved on to journaling, and I got a little looser with my retelling of a story. I didn't rely so much on the photo, although I do use a lot of photos in my journals. I used more, I want to say abstract things like ephemera and book pages and words and maybe a little bit of artwork here and there. And so there was a lot more a room for interpretation, I suppose, whenever I'm looking at my journals or whenever I'm working in my journals or somebody looks in my journals. And then sketchbooking. Well, sketchbooking, I mean, you're really kind of leaving it full of interpretation because I'm not maybe relying so much on that photo to tell the story or ephemera to tell the story. Now I'm feeling confident enough that I could maybe recreate the story either with my own drawing, and yes, you can draw, I can draw, we can draw, or I'm using color or shapes or line or composition, all of those artistic techniques that I always thought I was unworthy of. And then I realized, you know what? These are all just the same thing. The photo is me on a the scrapbook is me on a tricycle. The journaling is me with training wheels, and the sketchbook is me riding a bike. And yeah, I like it. And they're intertwined. You can go back and you can add things to a scrapbook and then things to a sketchbook and things to a journal that maybe some people think don't belong. But who are these people? And where'd these rules come from? I didn't know there was any rules in art, and at least not in my art. And so when I finished this, instead of coming up with ways that they are all different, I came up with, you know what, ultimately, my conclusion is scrapbooking, journaling, sketchbooking, these are all ways that artists, and yes, you are an artist. If you scrapbook, you journal, you sketchbook, you are an artist. These are all ways that artists can evoke feelings through their stories. Now, how you tell the story, well, that's up to you. Do you want to use photos? Do you want to use collage? Do you want to do color and line? Do you want to use words? And that's where you find out what kind of an artist you are, is when you go through and figure out, how do I want to tell those stories? And how do I want to evoke those feelings that I feel? And how do I get my audience to come up with their own feelings? All right, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this. This was a brain dump, and it really felt good getting it all out on this big piece of paper. And I have it hanging up in my room, and I kind of sit there and look at it every once in a while, and I love how I just did this total thought dump. So I hope you enjoyed this. I encourage you to maybe try this out and see if you can come up with differences, similarities, and the purposes for you to actually work in those different vessels. All right, my friends, I hope you are healthy. I hope you are happy, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Do something creative today.